forever. Like all kinds of family, we chose this one. This is episode 371, F9, lap 14. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too, and this episode's brought to you by the YouTube channel Magnet Fishing Cult. Join Jug Grouper Nubby and Navi from the Magnet Fishing Cult to fish in lakes and rivers. Shout out to those guys.
Well, shout out to those guys, and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. With us tonight, once again, back from last week, 2 episodes in a row. It's rare that someone other than me or Joe has been on 2 episodes in a row, so just, you guys are in elite company tonight. With us once again, our very own Hobbs and Shaw. We have Walt, Hickey, and Kim Bhasin. Hello, hello, hello.
What is up?
We are always
How
here.
are you two doing this evening?
Delightful. Yeah. No, this is great. We are like, man, getting close to the end of the lap, fellas. I don't know.
Very close.
These films get more dynamic and interesting the more that we go along.
So dynamic.
Yes, truly. Before we dive into this, I have 2 book updates, one about yours, one about another book. So first off, we'll get the other one, the non-Walt one, out of the way first. We had the Full Throttle franchise editors on a lap or 2 ago. I genuinely have no idea when that was because my brain is mush and time doesn't matter.
Also true.
But their book is on sale for $27 in the U.S. right now at Bloomsbury.com. So if you want the book of academic essays about the Fastiverse, about the Fast Furious franchise, go to Bloomsbury.com. You can get it for $27. It's also on sale in the U.K., so if you're a U.K. listener, it's on sale over there too. But on sale for $27, down from $40 here.
Not bad.
Walt, since you're here, I saved this for you.
Oh?
From our listener, Wes, said this in the Discord, quote, I finally started reading Walt's book. It's so good, I just bought another copy as a birthday gift for a friend, and I'm planning on buying another for my brother-in-law. I want to get it for all of my film friends.
Oh my God! Wes, thank you so much, dude.
So
yeah, I really appreciate
he is
that.
Single-handedly driving you up the bestseller charts.
I tell you what, like, it is like the most encouraging thing about this whole process has been when people read it and like the word of mouth genuinely occurs. Like they're just like, oh yeah, like I dug it, and like that is like. Honestly, the only praise that I would ever want, like blurbs and stuff are fun, but like people who read the book and tell their friends about it is genuinely where most of this stuff gets sold. So yeah, thank you.
It's also like similar, like when like I see download numbers and I see like streams and whatever. Like I know people listen to the show, but when people are like, "Oh, I listen," it's just like, "Oh, there's people." Like the numbers aren't just numbers.
Real
The
life
numbers also are
human people.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. But anyway, welcome. In a most 80s lap, we are finally... Joe, this is the one time I realized I'm finally happy that this is in the 80s. So, okay, my big issue with this movie, guys, and I don't know if you know this, but the math in this franchise is fucked up. The years don't make any sense. But if all of this shit that's in 1989 is 99, everything works out perfectly.
Perfectly.
The fact that we have an extra decade in there makes no sense, and I can't make any sense of that math at all. But, considering it's the 80s cult movie lap, this is the one time I'm happy it's the 80s, because we at least are in the 80s. Even though it's not very 80s, I'm glad that it's in the 80s.
I have a little bit of math that I did, Joey, while I was thinking about the 80s and it being in the 80s, okay? So, follow me for a second here. Jacob's Mustang, okay, that he's driving when he races Dom is a 92 Ford Mustang. So, although we see the track... right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can assume that Dom is gone
for a couple years. And this is at least in 92 when we see Mia. Okay.
And she's like at least 12, right? So that means in 2001 she's 21 in high school.
Oh my God. No, wait, yeah, this math is so bad.
It's bad.
It was worse. Like, 89 makes it really bad. Like, if you give them the 2 years there, and then
why did they
see
put
Mia,
a year? Why did they should just put a year on the Chiron?
We asked this as soon as it came across the screen in the movie. We were like,
I turned to Joe
what?
and I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, this is broken. It doesn't work. It's a decade off.
Yeah. They should never do, like, they should, like, just don't give any, this franchise needs to stop giving details. Because the more that it gives details, one that happened in this one, because obviously I'm paying some more attention to these films when I'm doing this watch, because I want to bring my A game to you folks. Your audience doesn't fuck around like that. They go to this like plane crashes in Montecito, And I'm just like, I wonder where that is. And so I look it up and I'm like, oh, cool, it's the tallest mountain in Corsica. I start reading it up and they're like, oh, the junta has taken over parts of it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're doing like a little junta thing in Corsica, the Mediterranean island. And then I look it up and it's just like, no, they just made up a country in South America named Montecito. They did a pseudo-Arabia thing. And it's just like, don't name it. Just don't fucking name it. Like, just say like, we got to go to the jungle, boys. It's like 10 clicks south of the Amazon. Don't mention shit. Like, I don't
Yeah. Anytime that we think they should explain something, they decide to just not. And then anytime that they do explain stuff, they do it without context that they have established themselves
100%.
Previously.
Aren't they typically vague though? Like just generally things are vague within this franchise. It's just when they don't, you're like, what is that?
This has to be the first fake country that they ever mentioned in the Fast and the Furious, because I would have noticed before now. Every other country and place that they go to is real. Right?
Yeah.
And this is the first time that they're just like, by the way, we're pulling a Sokovia on you. Guess what, motherfuckers? It is time for new random made up bullshit. And I would say.
And then they go to real countries afterwards. They don't continue it.
Yeah. They like to get a connecting flight through Madripoor. And like, no, it's like, it's bad. And like, I'm mad that they did it. I'm mad that they popped this cork in movie 9. We're going to get to another cork like this later.
Well, they also like don't like commit an MCU like genocide in Sokovia, or they don't like position some country as the bad guys like in Top Gun, where they're like, well, we want Russian dollars seeing this movie, so we can't say Russia's the enemy, we can't say that North Korea is the enemy.
I will
like, whatever.
say they do, like Roman kills a lot of those guys, a lot of those military guys, and I would also argue that the Latin American export market is one of the most important for these particular films. So it actually doesn't shock me that they did a pseudo-Arabia.
But like they avoided the Russia thing in Fate by having it be separatists, right? It's like, yeah, we're in Russia at a Russian base and everything, but those aren't. I mean, they're separatists. Okay?
I mean, that's not just like make up a fake military that took control of Corsica. That's actually way funnier. Like,
But you know, this movie, it does not really logic and the Fastiverse. It's really about vibes, and then when it's not vibes, it's like it should be vibes.
yeah.
I hate it when it's not about vibes. The whole point of this is the vibes.
Can I tell you guys the fun fact that I found that continues that? Because as I was looking for that, I found out what the title of this film is in Japan. Does anybody know?
Oh my god.
Because we discovered at one point that like in England, all the titles aren't fucked. Okay? They're just like Fast and Furious 1 through 10. That's just what they call them.
Is it called Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift 2?
It is not.
It should be.
It's not bad.
It is not. It's well, because in Japan they call them all Wild Speed 1. That's the first thing, and this one is Wild Speed Jet Break.
I mean,
Ooh,
I would see that film.
yeah.
That sounds fucking awesome. It's arguably a cooler title, like by far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, not arguably. That's for sure.
yeah.
Jet break. Before we go further, speaking of facts, we need a train fact. Guys, what's a train fact? Can you give us a train fact, please?
Train fact. Oh, Kim, you gotta take the train fact this week.
What was our last train fact?
I think our last train fact is how much it costs.
$42,000 or $48,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We only have, so there's 3 more
Yeah.
right now. There's this episode, there's the Fast 10 episode, and then there's the tune-up at the end of the lap, like the recap thing that we do. So we have this plus 2 more.
So there should be a bigger reveal here then, right?
Yeah.
That's a nice
Reveal.
little
Reveal.
big
We're
reveal.
getting near the end.
Yeah. Did you know that you could spend a bunch of money to renovate the inside of a sleeper car?
Okay, renovations.
Mm.
And it's a sleeper car, which we didn't know beforehand.
Mhm.
Okay.
I assumed, I did not know, but I assumed you could spend a lot of money to renovate the inside of a sleeper car.
Oh yeah.
I assume you can spend a lot of money to do many things.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
It's just the decision to do it in the first place. That's the
Go
real hump
Pops.
you gotta
Got a
get
lot of
over.
shit.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about the 80s. We talked about the 80s already. There's a lot of things to get to in this, and I think there's a lot of things to talk about in this, specifically as it ties into or does not tie into Fast 10, which we'll talk about in 3 weeks. But what did you guys think of the split timeline? The first time the franchise does that they actually have like there's been flashbacks and stuff, but this is like a conscious attempt to like tell a story in a different timeline, recast our core actors with younger actors. How do you think that all played out in this movie?
I don't like it. Like,
You don't like it.
No.
You just don't like it off the rip.
I
Okay.
just don't like it off jump. Every time it makes that move, like I just sigh a little bit and like, all right, well, we'll watch young Dom do the young thing. I mean, I guess I would watch a whole series about young Dom if it just stayed there in the young rock way, and it's just
Yep.
young Dom having adventures. But like, no, I just didn't. It broke it up too much in this. It's like a more complicated narrative to tell, and I don't want that out of my fast movies.
I thought it was great. I don't know. I think it really emphasized a lot of these characters, where they're coming from. I always like when they whip a brother out of some guy's ass. It's amazing. I love seeing Michael Rooker because I think that they were trying to imply that he was somewhat responsible for it because he's too famous to be in a flashback and not be responsible for the destruction of the car.
Of
Really
course.
cool that it was kind of a head fake. I love how, they were able to finally break out the camera filter that they used in all the Mexico scenes in Fast and Furious for this 80s, right? And I think that was just a really I don't know, you just love to see
Mexico in the 80s were the same color.
they're the exact same weird dusty reddish hue in a desert for no apparent reason. Yeah.
I always thought it was more like Scarface. Like I was looking for like that version of 80s, but you're right. Yeah. Does it look like that?
Yeah, it seems like he's just in like what, the rung right below NASCAR, which is where they are really running on absolutely nothing.
I think it's a couple below that.
It seems like a pretty legitimate like racetrack though, or do they all use the same like speedways?
Like the speedways have to do stuff besides the 2 NASCAR races they get a year,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're constantly running races at all these places. But I mean, like, this doesn't feel like a NASCAR track. But there's also like a ton of these speedways that just exist. Like we're just not in that. You're not in that world. Like you've never gone looking for them. But like in the middle of like bumfuck Pennsylvania, there's a whole bunch of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels several tiers below, like whatever. He's not like the like minor league hockey player in Mighty Ducks trying to make the pros, right? Like this is several tiers down.
I guess any level you can have athletes throwing things, but it's far enough down that like it seems like he could get away with it, right? Like he owes money,
definitely.
he can throw a race. It's
For
not
sure.
like you can really throw a NASCAR race. Maybe you could, probably you could.
Probably.
Yeah. You definitely could. Also, I think like the bookie does not exist who would take any money on this race in any amount. But
That's a very good point. Who is that
Yeah.
bookie? And who, like, how is he making odds for these races that are just like, this is like how they, like, don't let you bet on certain things on FanDuel, right? It's like, oh,
Exactly.
yeah, like, you're just not allowed to gamble on that because we don't know what they're going to do.
yeah, there's divisions low enough that they're just like, man, if you're betting on this, then either you have a real serious problem, we don't want your money, or you are the coach of that current team. Like,
Yeah. Nobody's taking, like, heavy bets on bottom rung NASCAR.
go on to DraftKings and was like, hey man, what's the action on the worst race that you've ever seen where a guy dies because there's no ambulance anywhere nearby?
I mean, like, I've gone to, like, Monmouth Park, where, like, the horses race here in New Jersey, and, like, you can bet on those. Like, maybe there's, like, an in-house sports book. I don't know. Like, it feels like, Joe, if your friend was like, hey, my dad's racing the thing, you want to come? And you go there, you're like, I don't give a shit about this. But, like, wouldn't, like, betting on it, like, make it a little bit more exciting? I mean,
Oh,
89
100%.
So, like, there's got to be some kind of,
110%.
ring set up.
I guess, but at the same time, it's like, but who? Who is
know.
that guy?
Are
that's
we
like
are we going to talk about all the flashback stuff right now? Because I do have some
Sure, we
thoughts.
can talk
on
about
the-
whatever you want.
So I got the director's cut because I felt like I
Yeah.
wanted to experience the film exactly as was intended.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, this cut was approximately 7 minutes longer than the theatrical cut.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
And mostly just like runs a few scenes a little bit longer. And I think that one of the main differences is that it does run some of the 80s stuff a little bit longer, like where he hugs 80s Letty, where he sees 80s his sister, where like there's stuff that later on that kind of comes. I think they did a pretty good job of casting the 80s versions of the
They
entire
look pretty
cast.
good.
Like, because the other guys that he hangs out with are like the 80s versions of the dudes from the first Fast and Furious film, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. And I thought they did a pretty good job on that. I was like, yeah, these guys look like scruffy like Nerf herders, like yeah, absolutely. This is very believable.
I think all the tangential cast they do a really good job of. I think the person that plays young Dom is a good actor, and they definitely hired him for his acting abilities. I don't think that
Yeah.
he or young Jacob look a lot like Vin Diesel or John Cena. So in that case, I'm like, okay, whatever. Because I think that they did a really good job of, like, young Letty is believable. Young Mia is very believable, that you're just like, oh, she just became Jordana Brewster at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the auxiliary ones, but the other ones, like, don't look close enough for me. But I get that that's, like, really how are you going to find a guy that looks like a young Vin Diesel that also is an actor enough that can do a young Vin Diesel?
I mean, it feels like you do one or the other, right?
Exactly.
You either have somebody who can, like, act like them or who looks like them, because it's not like whoever is playing young Mia is given a lot to do. Like, she's just there to, like, smile and hug and say hi to her brother, right? Like, you just have to look the part.
I completely agree. I don't. Why did you bring up John Cena though? That's peculiar to me.
Oh,
I watched the film. I didn't see him at all.
Did you see him? Yeah.
I didn't see him at all in the film.
I mean, it was also weird because, like, he was never mentioned before this movie. And then all of a sudden, like, I also think it's funny in this movie that Roman's like, you never told us you had a brother. It's like, we don't know anything about your family at all. Like, you can't get mad at us. It's not like you're telling us about your mom or your dad or your cousins or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that particular little speech that Roman gives, it's not him. That's us. That's the viewers being like, hey, what the hell? Surprise, brother. What the fuck is this about? That's who he's really speaking for.
Does the addition of Dom's brother, of a brother, not specifically Jacob, not specifically John Cena's portrayal, does the sudden addition of a brother character to our main character work for you in general, in this movie, in this franchise, at this point, 9 movies deep?
I think that the main issue is that it would be completely inconceivable for this to occur if Paul Walker was still with us and Brian was still in these films. Like, I think that a lot of this is them just realizing that without having, like, an on-screen counterweight, without having someone that he's got, like, a bit of a rival energy, but a bit of a brother energy with, that a lot of this, that like, Diesel's character is weird, right? Because Diesel's, like, you know, Dom is not daddy, right? Dom is not the daddy of this family, right? He's a member of this family, but he's not, like, he doesn't really have anybody within this organization that is, like, he's got, like, you know, goofy cousins kind of in the form of, you know, Tej and Roman. He's got, obviously, like, you know, he's got a sister, he's got all this kind of stuff. But, like, you know, the real weight that Walker brought to this was as kind of that, like, rival, brother, scrappy kind of counterweight. And it feels like a lot of the franchise has been trying to reconstruct that in one way or another through varying degrees of success. Whether it was, like, the Scott Eastwood character, which I don't really think was particularly effective because they were like, well, maybe he just needs to be next to a guy who's from law enforcement, right? A little bit more straight edge, a little bit more. Maybe that's what he needs. And that didn't go. And then I think that they were like, okay, well, maybe we get somebody who has as big of a personality as he does and maybe kind of counterweight it with that. And yeah, again, like, I see kind of why they want to do it because I think it kind of gets to some of the core notions of the franchise. But I do think that it doesn't super work. And maybe if there was more on-screen chemistry with Dwayne Johnson, then that would be a different question of as to who they kind of go with that with. But I do think that so much of this is born out of just, like, there is still kind of a hole in this franchise, and particularly when it comes to the ability to kind of have a counterweight to Dom at the center of it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Kim, what about you?
Wrong. It's amazing. Okay, listen. Okay, this is my wrestling moment of the film.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
Secret brother is a legendary wrestling trope. You'll see a character be on there for
Kane and the Undertaker.
And then suddenly, Secret Brother. Yeah, Kane and the Undertaker. That was 1997 at Bad Blood in Your House. The Dudley Boys were a tag team that were on TV for years and years, and then suddenly, Secret Brother, half brother, Spike, the little guy, comes out. And even, like, modern day wrestling, this still happens in. The main story in wrestling right now is the bloodline with Roman Reigns. And a couple years ago, suddenly the Usos' brother, Solo Sikoa, came out and helped them win a match. Again, out of nowhere. He's their real brother, by the way. But he just shows up, and in the canon of the show, he didn't exist until that moment in time. After just such the Usos had been in WWE for, like, more than a decade at that point, and suddenly, right, here's their brother. Wonderful. It's the best. I mean, come on. It's just you're taking it too seriously if you don't enjoy the Secret Brother.
I have a question that I realize I haven't asked either of you all lap long. as you're looking for the most wrestling moment, or as Walt, as you're looking for the most D&D moment, are you watching these movies? Are you watching this franchise as though it were a wrestling match, or are you just like, because when we watch other non Fast and Furious movies, we're like, what's the most Fast and Furious moment or whatever? Like, we still talk about that kind of stuff from time to time. So like, we always watch the movies on this podcast, even not Fast and Furious movies, kind of as Fast and Furious movies. And I'm wondering, is this just so core to who you are, and so like, I mean, you've both made the point, very established, that this is a D&D campaign. These are just wrestling moments. It's like, it is what it is. So you can watch like this. But I guess I'm wondering, are you watching it like it is that? Or are you just pointing at a moment? Like, how into this and this approach and this, like, way of watching actually are you two?
The thing is, I watch kind of everything like it's wrestling. And
that makes sense.
And this is not an exception, right? Like, because like these tropes come from a certain place, and there's a reason these wrestling stories have endured the test, right? They've been running weekly live shows for 3 decades, right, on TV. Like, that's nuts. And some of these stories are 30-year-long stories that they're just telling. So in the core, I think for Walter, it's like the way he talks about comic books, where like stuff comes in and out, everything's like super complicated, but these characters retain their story throughout their whole existence, right? So you'll see these characters who've experienced all these things for all these years, and Secret Brother, once it's there to stay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I know Kim definitely views a lot of this stuff through the lens of wrestling. I think that like the reason that I view these movies through the lens of D&D is not because it's the only way that I see things, it's because it is genuinely the exception. One reason that these films kind of got my attention, whether you want to a way that I kind of developed admiration for them was because they felt really like a break from the sameness. It felt like every single film was trying to be Star Wars, like and like in good ways and bad. I think that like I've alluded to some of it, but like the idea is like there's this idea that generally in the common conversation gets from Joseph Campbell, right? And it's the hero's journey. It's the idea of like, it's the classic tale of like small, normal farm boy from the middle of nowhere kind of sets out onto a journey. He learns a lot of new things in the process. He acquires a mentor. He will, meet a woman who changes his life, kind of descends into, the unknown, whether it's the netherworld, the underworld, or just kind of the realm of magic, will kind of have an adventure there, refusal of the call, all these kind of notes that we see through mythology and through epic and through stories that kind of come time and time again. Eventually he'll, defeat the evil, defeat the enemy, learn more about himself and his role in the process, and then kind of return home with better understanding.
Yes.
And like, this is everywhere in Western literature, Eastern literature. It is just like it is a form of a story that has existed as long as we literally have stories. And that's what makes it so interesting. And the idea is that you can really kind of tell that thing with anything. That's Toy Story, that's Star Wars, that's the Lord of the Rings, that's most of the things that we kind of really care about, and the biggest franchises that mean something to us are all some form of that. And like, that's fine. But then Star Wars made too much money, and then every single franchise started to just do that, right? Because Lucas was very open about what where his sources were.
Sure.
People realized that this is the kind of story that they want to see. It's the same reason that whenever, for a long time, when they did, comic book adaptations, they would always do that hero's journey. They would always kill Martha Wayne at the beginning of Batman so that you can see Batman descend into darkness, come out of it, emerge whole new, and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, it was always origin stories. It was always starting one way and then becoming something else. And I felt that was increasingly getting boring as shit. And like, these things come around and they actively reject that, right? Because in the D&D style of storytelling, you don't finish where you started again. You don't go home again with more knowledge. You don't change a little bit and kind of return, right? There isn't that kind of cyclical element to it. It is like you start somewhere and then you end up something very different, someone very different, and honestly doing different things. And then the next time that we see you, you've leveled up. And the next time we see you, you've leveled up. And you keep gaining in new things. But the idea of going backwards is fundamentally anathema to how this is, right? And like, Fast and Furious was truly the first one to kind of do this, right? right? Like it's really by the time that we get to Fast Five that you see them really get into their comfort level with this, where they're just going to keep on giving these guys more skills. They're going to go from car thieves to car racers to, bank heists to spies to astronauts, right? And like that's cool about it, and it was new, and that is what really drew me to this because it was the first time that you really saw a filmmaker approach this franchise not from that Campbellian style, but from the Gygaxian style. And I do think that it did start people on that. Like I think that the MCU does that in every way, right? Like the early films were very much Joseph Campbell style, Iron Man starts that kind of stuff, right? But like now, like it's always just propulsive and moves forward. And so I like that kind of storytelling. I find it very intriguing that this was one of the first franchises, in no small part due to the impact of Vin Diesel, to kind of push us along in that way,
No, that makes a ton of sense.
Like we've spent so much time comparing this franchise because you kind of have to like Marvel and to everything else, and then you're just like, there's another way you can look at it, be like, no, it's doing something different. Like it's not doing the same thing, which I don't think that's what people are railing. I think people. Why do you think people hate this franchise? Like it feels like MCU people seem to hate because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a different thing. Like there are a lot, but there's not much more than many other franchises. Is there something? Because like I think that could be the kind of thing that either draws somebody to it or repels somebody away. But I don't think people are seeing it like that. Because you see online when there's a new trailer, people are just like, another one of these. Like there seems
still
to be a
making
sentiment
these.
That like this franchise in particular, I'm sure that that's true of like every franchise. Maybe we're just more sensitive to it because like we pay more attention to it for the show. But like, what about this franchise do you think people don't like? Is it just that like, oh no, another car movie, or like, what is there something different? Because I don't know that I have an answer.
I don't know if I super have an answer either. I think like some of it does come from the people who take that kind of stuff seriously also look down on this for being a car. Like I think that like its ability to kind of transcend class I think is like an element of it where like it is like the hobby that it is glorifying and indulging is not necessarily an intellectual one, and so people will not meet it on any intellectual level. At the same time, it also deals in wrestlers. It also deals it like it is deliberately, I think, kind of relishing in populist entertainment in a way that even the poptimists get kind of skeptical of elevating that too much. And like I know that we're having like bigger conversations about this, and like that like I don't think that this is the only franchise out there, and I think that if you meet it on its terms, it's excellent. But I think that a lot of times people are worried as to what the implications of these kind of things are. And like if every franchise starts looking like this, like is that like you do kind of get the situation of like you don't want a thing that is one of a kind to become the only way that things are done, which is I think the main reason that people get frustrated by Marvel, which is that Disney's now making 3 of these films a year, and that means that they used to only make 1 of these films a year, and so the money for the other 2 is getting taken away from other stuff. And so I think that people get a little bit skeptical about glorifying this kind of action-y kind of movie. I think people get hung up on the plot of it in a way that there's action fans out there who really do like the kind of standalone style thing where like they're just not kind of making anymore, right? Like they're not making diehards anymore. Everything's got to be kind of bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I think that people kind of bristle at the scale of this, and they're worried about what it looks like if this thing wins.
And for some reason, like the level of like suspension of disbelief required to watch this kind of show is pretty high. Like and you made that point about the lack of intellectuality here. I mean, people look down on folks for playing D&D and watching wrestling and these kinds of things where it's just like not respected in the sort of way that more dramatic, that's not the right word, but like drama movies would be would be viewed, right? Like so much of this is suspension. You have to suspend your disbelief, but it's also like slapsticky and it is by nature like pretty damn silly, right?
Yes.
In the same way that we're faking like or scripting and faking a wrestling match, like you have to make that leap and decide in your brain, like, oh yeah, we're gonna watch this because it's fun, and people don't necessarily want to do that.
Like, listen, I respect the highs of this franchise a lot, particularly in the action sense. In the later films, there's a lot of fucking flubber in this stuff. Like, there's a lot of like weightless chase scenes. But even just like there's a lot of action sequences that were clearly made in a laboratory, which is fine, but like it's like this is a franchise that used to be extremely kinetic, and like if you think back to the Brazil chase, which I still think is one of the most accomplished things that this thing's ever done, and you compare it to the chase in this one, where potentially like a tractor trailer is flipping over on itself end to end, and like that kind like there's elements of it that I think that like it does feel a little bit less actiony in a way, and it does feel a little bit more science fiction-y, that I think starts to kind of you lose some of the action stuff but fail to gain the science fiction crowd, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it doesn't go science fiction-y enough to be like, oh, we're in space now. Like, actually,
like I guess also to that point, like our brains, Joe and my brains are so broken that like it feels too actiony to me, because we've seen these enough that like seeing the action scene doesn't do anything for us anymore. Like we've already done that. Like we want more character moments. So to be like it's not actiony enough, it's just like a few. But like I also understand that like people, the normal fan does not want Suki to return because they're like, who is this? Why is she in the movie?
Yeah.
Right.
And she doesn't need a 15-minute backstory.
What's
for us.
the lore implication?
Yeah.
There was a period like I was watching this movie on my phone, and I like put it in my pocket to go grab a drink, and I was just listening to it in my headphones during that time, and there was just no dialogue.
The way the artist intended.
It was just crashing and yelling and grunts for like several minutes.
Now, Kim gave his most wrestling moment. Walt, what is your most D&D moment? We're talking about how this franchise is D&D. Yeah. What is the most D&D moment from this movie?
This one, so like last week in Hobbs and Shaw, we talked about backstories that kind of came out of nowhere, sisters that kind of came out of nowhere in that one. I did that knowing that obviously we're going to have the reveal of a brother.
For sure.
Because I do kind of like, in these last two films that we have, there's some really interesting D&D stuff happening beyond that. And I think the biggest one with this, so like Joseph Campbell style story, hero's journey style story, you kind of go back to the beginning. Like you started as a farm boy, you return to the farm, knowing more than you used to, believing more than you used to, but still being kind of like, a farm boy with knowledge, right? Whereas in the Gygaxian thing, you do increment each time. And that's important because end games are very obvious and clear with Campbellian stories, because you got to go home again, and you realize that you can't go home again, and that's interesting, and there's conflict there, and there's something like kind of neat there and sweet and bittersweet, but that's like you kind of get your ending nice and tied up in a bow for yourself, right? Whereas with a Gygaxian story that this one is, the evoking D&D, like the power scale can get really out of hand. Now, Kim and I played a Dungeons and Dragons campaign during the pandemic, entirely remote. We just started up a thing, and I DM'd it, and essentially it was just really like we power scaled very quickly just because we kind of wanted to get a little tour of Dungeons and Dragons and kind of what it feels like to play lower levels, mid levels, upper levels. And like the thing about D&D at upper levels is that like there's 20 levels that you can probably hit. Takes a while to kind of scale them. You can play a character for like 2 years and still get to like level 10 max. Once you get to like level 14, 15, 16, particularly for magical users, like you really just get too beefy. You get too powerful. It's very hard to come up with a thing that can pose a serious challenge for you that isn't just kind of a one-click kill. It's very hard to kind of design enemies for you that feel both satisfying as well as challenging, as well as not having to tie one hand behind your back. Specifically, like with magic users, like, towards the really top of the game, like you basically become a demigod, and it is very hard to kill you. It is very hard to hurt you. It is very hard to figure out, like, you kind of have to throw people like literally against like archdemons and stuff like that just in order to kind of make a dent. And like that's what's interesting about this phase of these movies, which is that it's very clear that they've hit that, right? There's even that entire conversation that they have kind of lampshading it, where like they're like we always survive. Like, isn't that kind of weird? I don't have a scratch on me, that kind of stuff. And like you can play D&D and like face against like things that would have ordinarily killed anything that was just baseline in seconds and not even get a scratch on you just because of the way the game works. And it kind of almost like take some of the fun out of it. I'm in a game now. It's a type of, it's been on Blades in the Dark, and I've hit a character that's just like kind of just really good at all the skills that he needs to be good at in order to succeed, and it gets a little bit less fun. And so then you have to start having conversations about like, all right, what does retirement look like? What does Blaze of Glory look like? What does going down on your own terms or in a fun way kind of look like? Just because it no longer becomes fun to play the game as much as it was when you could live or die on any given hit against any given adversary.
Walt's just mad that he couldn't do anything about my illusion wizard Grandmaster Radicchio. Okay, Grandmaster Radicchio was out there just
Grandmaster
absolutely
Radicchio is very good. It was a very good wizard. It was a very, very good wizard, and I gave you a good clean death. I gave you 10 out of 10, like really, really good opportunity, Blaze of Glory. You're welcome. And like it is a lot of like it does hit like you don't get that frustration in Star Wars because there will always be somebody bigger. There'll always be an empire more powerful than you. There's always going to be other stuff that they can throw at you. Luke's a good pilot, but he's not the great. Like if you threw him 10,000 to 1, I don't know if he wins it. Like whereas like in this kind of situation, like these guys are almost too good, and so a lot of the struggles that they have at this point in the franchise is kind of like, well, who is the bad guy that could possibly hit these guys anymore, and why would they even want to fight them, and how do they kind of close this element of their journey out, because it's kind of tough to imagine how they can move up, you know. So that is my D&D moment, which is some of the friction that we're feeling at this point in the franchise that I think is kind of a normal outcome for a lot of Gygaxian stories.
And that's also like the directly why they have to save the world and everything, because like anything less is like a waste of their powers, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just like completely outgunning anybody, and it just kind of feels a little bit like, you know, they have the farm, they have the family, like you should just be able to kind of go out in the distance or that, like, you know, they've got to kind of figure out a clean end for this, because it just gets tough to realistically set up what the possible satisfying end games are the further that they get into this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we always say, like, they have to eventually burn this down and start over again, right?
Yeah.
Like a full reboot, like not the, like, you know, fast forward reboot.
Well, because there's also, like, to that point, there is, like, you know, Dom threatens or tries to kill himself in this to save the family, right? And Roman talks about invincibility. Like, there's two different ends of the spectrum, and they, like, sort of don't commit to either. Like, just further being like, we need a hard reset.
I think that they introduced the good idea that they really get at this, and I didn't even notice it the first time, and I think I only realized it this time because I was thinking on the D&D terms of it, which is that, like, there's that moment where it's a flashback to the 70s, I guess, right? Whatever's before the 80s. And like they're fixing cars, and he's like, well, listen, this Charger will live forever if you do it. And like family is immortal. Like any one of, like, you know, like the implication being like, listen, we might go at some point, but the thing that you build that is immortal is the family, right? And that is what I think a possible way that they're going to tie this all together, which is just like, yeah, they've hit a point where their power scales are very nuts, where, you know, they've gone from being, they're fucking astronauts now, right? And we'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure, but like, it's really tough to figure out what's next. And like, the joke is always like time travel, right? But like, I don't know, man, like they are kind of hitting it. They're really chafing with what they can accomplish here. And I think that a good end is at this point one of the only things that we can kind of hope for them.
The MCU literally did that at the end of it. Time travel.
I know. It wasn't my favorite. I think it might have ruined the whole thing.
I mean, that's like the one big thing that they have not done yet that they feel like they might do, could do, are going to do. They went to space in this movie.
They went to space. Did you guys like when they went to space? We can talk about them going to space if you want.
I think it's tongue in cheek. I think that the idea of them putting it in there to be like, you fuckers wanted space, here's your space. I think that idea of it is really, really fun. In actuality, did they need to go to space? Does it contribute anything to the movie? Not really. But just like laughing at the fans, I think is a good place to be.
I think it is cinema. I think it is one of the best things I've ever seen. I think like the space launch scene where like I think it is actually genuinely very good. It is also one of the first times that I ever actually felt risk, because I felt like one of them pulling a Space Cowboys was in the mix there for a bit, and obviously they do drive through a satellite to destroy it, and I kind of love it.
I had the space card down as a 80s moment because it's
Pontiac
MacGyver.
Fiero?
Like they MacGyvered together a literal spacecraft.
My big 80s moment was just like the idea of space. It feels like in the 80s we were all just obsessed with space. Like I have like all these space Legos from the 80s and stuff. So like I think just anything dealing with outer space especially that peak 80s?
My 80s moment was a shitload of Yugoslavian money in a weird bunker. That's very, very 80s.
Joe, what was your pick?
I was like, well, they were in the 80s, but I think actually the racetrack itself, especially when they revisit it back and it's just like dead and sitting there, I think the racetrack looks like something out of the 80s. Like,
yeah.
Grass overgrown, shit like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for the crew. I'm actually just very interested. What would you rather take to the ISS, a Pontiac Fiero or a Boeing Starliner?
Oh, well, Pontiac Fiero is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 for 1.
1 for 1, yeah. It's 100%. It was 100% of the time.
As far as we know. 1 for 1.
Oh, God.
And I know that past success is not indicative of, like, future,
No, of
whatever,
course.
you know what I mean? But, like...
Past failure certainly is, though.
I know. I'm going to go with the Fiero, I think.
Gotta go Fiero. American engineering.
Yeah. Is that Japanese engineering or is that American?
Oh, must be. Yeah, Pontiac. Well, Pontiac's.
No, I mean
American.
like because they were from Tokyo Drift, right? So like.
Right, the engineers themselves. Yeah.
Well, wait, is it
engineers are
also
Japanese.
they're in Europe, right? So is that a European space agency? I don't know. It's an international effort to get to this orbit, and I
100%.
respect it. I love that.
Of course.
The 2-second car. Yeah. There's something I noticed, again, watching these movies with subtitles, that there is Project Aries, right, which is the sort of vague, nebulous computer thing there. And Tej is like, Aries is the god of war. But in the subtitles, they spell it like the astrological sign, Aries.
Right.
And then on the line where Tej says Aries is the god of war, it's spelled Ares, but then somebody's like, yeah, Aries, and they once again revert to Aries. So, like, that's not good, but, like, Aries is the ram, maybe we could do something with that, I don't know, but I was just like,
That's really funny.
nobody looked at this? Nobody was just like, that's not the same, like, you heard the guy say, like, you correct
I
these
gotta
subtitles.
say, there are no horoscope girlies who worked on this film.
Not a single one.
Not a single one.
No horoscope girlies, I don't think, since whoever wrote Lance Barnaby from school.
Yeah,
That was definitely someone who was big into... But since then,
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the, once again, retconning Han, adding in what happened after Han, finding out that Giselle was one of Mr. Nobody's agents, now that there is a sister named Elle who is in this world but did not return, will not return for Fast 10. What do you make of all the, once again, retconning and the whole Han of it all, and how much cooler would it have been if we did not know that Han was in this movie from all the trailers?
Yeah, I think it just lost a lot of its punch as a result of the trailer stuff. The idea, though, that, like, I don't know, again, if they're explaining, they're losing. Every time that this franchise tries to explain something, I think that they could have just, like, instead of having the whole elaborate scene, if they had just had the one scene of Mr. Nobody watching the crash and then Han watching him watch the crash and then nothing else to elaborate what happened, it just gets everything they want to convey done far quicker while also allowing people just to fill in the blanks, you know?
I have a similar flip just on that note. After we see 10, are we to assume that Dante was perhaps responsible for taking down Mr. Nobody?
Maybe.
Is that what they're trying to imply? Because they're like, somebody got onto the plane and, like, freed Cypher, but then, like, we see that they don't know each other.
Yeah.
There's, like, some of these things that I'm like, that one is, like, what? Like, if they would have been like, oh, is that the guy that took down Mr. Nobody's plane? And then they'd be like, yeah, that was me. Like, that would have solved, like, the whole gap that we have here.
Is that the kind of thing that they just don't make the decision on? They keep it vague like that so they can decide later?
Yeah, but they do that with a lot of stuff.
And then a lot of things just get left.
Mr. Nobody specifically, and Cypher specifically, they felt like they had huge plans in line for, and then they just completely punted on both of them.
Have I told you guys about, there was like this sideways video essay about Rey's theme from The Force Awakens? Have I ever? Okay. So there's this video by this guy Sideways. It's very, very good. Sometimes you have to Google around for it because he does music video essays, and music is a hard thing to write about on YouTube for the obvious reasons. And like he was just like, John Williams is a genius because if you look at at Rey's theme from Star Wars: The Force Awakens, he specifically wrote it in a way that it interpolates with the Obi-Wan theme, with the Palpatine theme, with the Anakin theme, and I believe with one of the other themes, like the Padme theme. That way, that depending on who they decided Rey's parentage was, they could actually fold it in musically with the existing theme that happened. So if she was Obi-Wan's niece, they could have found a way to make it work musically in film 8, film 9, whatever it was. Same thing with Palpatine, same thing with all that kind of stuff. And it just feels like this franchise is always trying to do that, where they're always just kind of putting stuff out there being like, yeah, we'll figure it out next time, or yeah, no, here's a mystery that we'll pick up next time, and they never pick up the right mysteries. They always just throw in a new sibling and then say like, they were here the whole time, on to the next one.
We did get Mr. Nobody's help me Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. That was dope.
That's essentially that exact same thing, yeah. You're absolutely
I do feel
right.
like, though, like what the franchise is doing in that regard, Walt, is like what we do is like we make, like also, Kim, I want to know who the voice of Etion is from this movie. Like, we just guess everything so that when it actually, something happens, someone's just like, you guessed that. And we're just like, did we? Because we guessed everything.
It's Jack Toretto.
Ooh.
Daddy
Michael
Toretto back? Oh,
Daddy Toretto.
I thought it was very, very, very funny that Nathalie Emmanuel cannot drive. I think that's like honestly just a really good bit that after she's been in these films for like 4 or 5 films now, the revelation that Ramsey does not know how to drive, very, very good.
We should have
very good.
saved
That is
the
a really
fact
good
that I
comedic
can't
bit.
drive until this moment right now.
Yeah, but you haven't been in like 4 films of a driving based franchise.
No, but I have talked about nearly 10 of these films.
You would think, though, like, if your social circle went from being mostly computer friends that you talk to on Discord to gearheads that you hang out and drive around with, wouldn't you, like, at least kick around the idea of, like, maybe I should take some driving lessons?
Right.
Like, it
They
might...
give her driving. They give her like the Sean special, like where he's at the docks or whatever, right? You know what I mean? That she like gets to like when they're in the jungle, they're like, "Here, Ramsey, do you want to take that Jeep around?" And she's like, "Sure," and like just does little circles and stuff for a while.
It's just like teaching her how to make a K-turn.
Yeah,
She's really good with the magnet, though.
she's
Yeah.
good with the magnet.
Pop quiz. I will Venmo either of you $10 if you can answer the question, who is Kara? Cardi B is Lisa, Kara's younger sister. Who is Kara?
Cardi B is...
Cardi, yeah.
Cardi B plays Lisa,
Hey,
L-E-Y-S-A.
she's wonderful in this flick. I don't know, like, you know,
Great drop in. I
Great.
agree.
Incredible.
Top tier.
perfect like cameo. Anyway,
But she also teased that beforehand, and that wasn't... I wish it was really random.
Same. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Let her rip.
Kara, as everyone remembers, because they're just like, oh, Kara's
Yes,
younger sister
yeah.
made good. And she's like, hold on, who's Kara? Like, we didn't even remember. Then somebody reminded, like, I think maybe Wes reminded us, like, Kara is the girl in Han's car in the opening scene to Fast and Furious. Kara has a slightly bigger role in Los Bandoleros, the Vin Diesel directed film between 3 and 4.
She's
That
the
is-
woman with Han. Yeah.
Cardi B is great. I'm glad that she's in this. I'm glad that they're tying her in, but like to compare her to be like to literally name drop.
And for all the
impressive.
things again that they like don't tie up
Yeah.
or do choose to continue the continuity for, why do you pick that one?
I feel like I have intricate family trees for everyone except the main characters. Like,
Yeah.
like the siblings of the Shaws and their mom, Dame Helen Mirren, who, by the way, you clearly had a hand in shaping the script if you can write the line for Helen Mirren to look at you and say, "You're my favorite American." Like,
Also, like, Queenie Jewel Thief, except, like, Ocean's 11. I'd watch that.
hey, Dame Helen Mirren is great. Like, she can act in literally anything as anything. 10 out of 10. May I bring something up?
You got it.
What did you guys think of the first conversation that Mia and Letty have in the entire franchise?
Is it literally
Yeah,
the first
okay.
car?
So, yes. I did this because I watched that scene and I was
What?
like, that's interesting. Oh, fellas, hold the fucking phone because I'm going to go through this. I was like, that feels like it's the first time they've ever talked. And so I was like, well, I have to look into it. So the way that I decided to look into it was I went to BechdelTest.com to find all the times that two women talk in the Fast and Furious franchise to each other.
Yes.
I'm going to go through those together. For folks who aren't aware,
It can't be too long of a list.
Hey,
we will allow you this.
these things start to pass increasingly, and we're going to get to why they do it in a second. The Bechdel test, for those who are unaware, a film has to have 2 named women in it who talk to each other, who talk about something besides a man. pass is one of those, all that kind of stuff. It's a very basic.
So do we start on like film 5?
Okay, so the Fast and the Furious does not pass the Bechdel test. There's a moment where Letty walks into the Toretto store, looks at Mia Toretto, and I believe says, "How you living, girl?" No response, and then keeps walking. So they do not talk. They
so
do
she
not.
tried. She tried.
She attempts to initiate a conversation that is not about a man, and it does not work. So the film fails.
Okay.
Too Fast, Too Furious. No.
Well, there's only like one woman in that entire movie, basically.
Yep, and it mostly bikini clad, whatever. The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. No. Somebody's like, I'm pretty sure the only time that women interacted in this movie is a split shot of two women making out in a hallway.
Which happens in the first 3 movies. In each of the first 3 movies, 2 women make out. So just putting that out there.
Fast and Furious, 2009. Somebody writes, there are 3 significant female characters, but we never see them talk to each other.
Also,
makes sense, yeah.
Only at
Gal
one
Gadot's
point,
character Giselle is not named.
only at one point do Jordana Brewster's and Gal Gadot's characters speak together. And that is that. Now in 5...
Well, also, I just want to go back to like the 2 named characters. She does not have a name in that movie.
She doesn't have a name in that movie?
No.
No.
No. All right, so Fast 5 passes. The first time that people thought it might pass is when Vince's wife talks to Mia about the pregnancy, but then the fact that it is Vince's wife and not a named character does not work. It is questionable if it is not about a man, but nevertheless, that film ends up passing one way or another. But again, not because Letty and Mia talk to each other, so they have not spoken yet. We are now at film 6 in this franchise, and they have not spoken yet.
Okay.
Fast and Furious 6. This film does pass the Bechdel test. Gina Carano and Michelle Rodriguez vamp at each other during their quote unquote cat fight.
Okay, yeah, but then it's just them catfighting. Yeah,
that is it. That is all. That is what happens.
It's the entire film. Okay.
That is correct. Yes. And so Elena and Letty talk about how wonderful Elena is to give up Toretto once Letty is found alive. But again, you'll notice that Mia and Letty have not spoken to each other yet in the 6th film of the franchise.
No.
In the 7th film of the franchise, Michelle Rodriguez and Ronda Rousey talk to each other about fighting, and Michelle Rodriguez. Yep.
Yeah, that's the wrong.
What
is she says something really, really stupid to her
about being bored.
What is this, these fights, these parties bore me. That was the whole that's that part. Okay.
Yep.
That's
and so that is Michelle Rodriguez and Nathalie Emmanuel talk to each other about hacking the drone that is chasing them, and those are the 2 conversations in Furious 7. Again, I will point out, Mia has not talked to Letty yet.
Okay.
Well, what if the drone is a boy? Does that still count? If the drone is gendered?
Yeah, I think it is. We then get to Fate of the Furious. Here's why Fate of the Furious passes the Bechdel test. During the chase scene in Russia, Ramsey and Letty are in a car together, and when they are in a tight spot, tell me we're going to be okay. And then Letty says, "We got this." And this is the only example in the film. And so, at this point, 8 films into the franchise, Letty has not spoken to Mia. At all.
Also, women have spoken to each other like one word,
times,
maybe a couple times.
It's not great. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. This film does not pass the Bechdel test. 2 women did not talk to each other. Fast 9, the Fast Saga. Finally, it's like they're talking in Tokyo for one scene. And I was just shocked because I literally was just like, I feel like this is the first time that these 2 characters have said anything to each other ever. And so, it's worse than I thought. They have been in 9 movies together. This is the first time that they say a single word back and forth.
Does it make it better or worse than they are basically talking about things that we were never told actually happened?
Sure.
Like we are learning a lot about them, but it's not about the characters that we know. Just like, that was a crazy thing we did.
Yeah. I don't hate it. Again, I wish that there were more of it. I just think it's deeply funny, when sometimes you'll watch, you kind of forget that these guys actually didn't overlap all that much and that kind of stuff. And obviously, there were moments when, Elena came in almost to kind of replace Letty in some regards, but they have more back and forth than Mia and Letty do. It's very, very strange. And I also don't think that they talk in Fast X. So this might be the only time that our 2 female leads have any conversation.
That's just terrifying.
It's wild.
We knew it, but we didn't know it to that that level of actual fact.
Well, speaking of women in this movie, what do you think of Cypher with a new haircut in a glass box and kind of given stuff to do, but also kind of not given anything to do?
How many days of shooting do you think she had?
One.
No,
2?
couple.
I say
2
less
or
than
3?
a week. A week
For
is
sure,
a
less
max.
than a week. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's only on with like Bargain Bin Skarsgård.
It's always in that warehouse
right?
too, right? Because
Yeah.
like in 10, I don't want to talk too much about 10 now, but like in 10, there's at least multiple locations. Like she's at the Toretto house and she's at the warehouse or the Skyrise or whatever. Like here,
She's in a
Ireland
cockpit in a
warehouse.
box. End of list.
yeah.
I like the continuity because for once the bad guy is still the bad guy. Everyone
Yeah.
else has face turned to this point or just been killed.
That's fair. That's a good point. Yeah. Cypher is still bad and continues to be bad. That's a good point. They're eventually going to get Cypher on their team, though. We know that, right? Like, that's
Right.
ultimately what's going to happen.
That's what's happening currently. Yeah.
Well, she's kind of on the team already.
That's what I mean. But, like here, I'm going to save you, blah, blah, blah. This is my part of the mission. Like, it's coming.
Enemies become friends a lot in this franchise.
They definitely do.
Well, we also, going into this movie, Joe and I were like, so will it be this movie or the next movie when Jacob becomes family? Because like he's going to become family. Like he's going to become a good guy.
As soon as they
but,
said
like,
that there's a missing brother, it's John Cena. We're like, is he going to be family by the end of this movie?
we did not expect 90 minutes into this movie to be like, oh no, he's firmly a good guy.
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna let it ride 1 or 2, like at least like into the beginning of 10 was gonna be like, okay, like he's back. How do you guys feel about the ending here that Brian pulls up that never pays out in 10?
I have told Michael, my husband, about how sometimes these films end with just a car pulling up and it's Brian, and he is incredulous that this has been allowed to happen.
I kind of loved it this time. I normally would agree with him, and this time I'm just like, it's pretty good.
But we don't get the payout. Like the whole
I know.
thing was
Well,
the
we
setup.
can't. I don't want the payout. I don't want to see CGI Brian.
I think if you put like a boot on the ground coming out of the car and then like, hey, in the background, that's better than this.
He wears like Chucks, right? Just one Chuck Taylor.
That's all you need.
Dirt.
But for them to do this at the end of 9 so that everybody's like, cool, 10, we come back, Brian's there, and then they just don't have Brian again.
Yeah, it's weird where they're just like his main character trait in the subsequent like 3-4 movies of this is just like, yeah, he's just late. I don't know what to tell you. Like
Babysitter and late.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, secret brother for Brian. Let's do that.
What did we say? We said at one point, like, Cypher has to be related to Brian, right?
Well, we said Cypher. We also said Brie Larson's character in the next movie, but
she's not. She's
but
Mr.
she's
Nobody's.
also she's but
Mr. Nobody's daughter. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of family, there is a thing. And there's not much of conversation here. I just think it's funny that like there's a conversation in this movie with Dom and Mia. So in the director's cut, in the extended version, there is the scene where Dom basically tells Mia we're going away. In the theatrical version, that scene is not there.
Yeah.
We just don't see what happens to her,
And
she
she
just
shows up
later.
in the thing, which I think
can see-
actually plays a lot better. But
Interesting.
But in this scene where the extended scene where he's talking to Mia, he says something along the lines of like, being a dad has changed the way I think about things. And it's like, yeah, he was not a dad in the last movie, but he's a dad now. But ostensibly, he's had 4 years in between movies to be a dad and change the way. It's just like, we just happen to hear him talking about being a dad for the first time in this movie. But I'm like, no. Like, it's not like you're doing things differently now. He's like, being a dad's like a change. It's just like, no, you've been a dad. Like you're whatever's changed has already changed. But so it's kind of funny little sort of movie shorthand of like peering into the character's life that we've not checked in with 4 years, but like would have already come to terms with a lot of this stuff years ago if this was real life.
It's very have you ever seen the Dewey Cox movie with John C. Reilly?
Walk Hard.
I have not, but I
Walk
know
Hard.
about
Walk
it.
Hard's
Yeah.
amazing because a lot of times, like, it's a like standard musician biopic is what it's making fun of, and oftentimes they'll do like parts of the career transition to being like, I'm in my contemplative era now. I'm past the point where I'm writing pop hits. I want to write important stuff, and like, they'll just like say it directly out loud and just be like, I'm older and wiser now, so obviously I regret some of the things I've done, and so it just feels a little bit like this, where it's just like, I'm a dad now, and that's why I'm not going to take risks.
Yeah, see, you want to give the audience, they give us so much, and then also just make you make giant logical jumps in other places. And
But also, while you're saying he's a dad now, I'm not going to take risks. I'm a dad now. I'm also going to die for my son.
Does Letty save him? We see like Letty, does Letty save him, or does the idea of Letty save him?
Good question.
Because he's doing the like light at the end of the tunnel thing. He hears Letty. You would assume that no matter what, if he was dying and light at the end of the tunnel, he would hear Letty. And how does he hear her underwater? Because he's underwater. This is like the worst. This is the most egregious one for me this time. Is like just like we're like, okay, Dom rips down the entire water thing, okay, by himself. He falls in. At no point does anybody watching this film think that Dom is going to die in that situation. Not at all. Not even a tiny bit. And then he's just like, okay, I'm back and there, I'm awake. Letty's sitting there, and they're like, cool, you're alive, thanks. And they just keep going.
Yeah, I think that the script is slightly underbaked. I think that I think that the script for this film started out as a like a cork board that was like space on end of
secret
on
brother,
and then secret brother in the middle, and then flashback question mark at the beginning, and then they were just like, just make it happen. Everything in between is jazz. Like,
what's going through my brain through all this, we mentioned this briefly last time, is that we are about to watch in the coming weeks all 10 movies in chronological order. And I feel like most of that is relatively easy other than the Han stuff, except this movie really mucks it all up. And so I was sort of watching this to see, like, how is Randy going to edit this in a way that makes sense? There's also, like, flashbacks within flashbacks. There's also, like,
right.
In current day, Han is telling the story about Mr. Nobody. So I'm assuming if it's truly chronological, that will be told without the actual visual showings of what happened, because we've already seen that when it happened. And I'm just like, this seems so complicated, and I want to see it, and I'm glad that I didn't have to make it, because I wouldn't have the patience for it, but I will watch it. So that's how like a lot of this movie was spent, me being like, what?
I'm excited for you guys. I think that's gonna be a new way to watch it, you know?
I think it's gonna be really strange, like in a good way.
Yeah, I don't think that these films were designed to be watched that way, in a way that I think it'll be very interesting to force it to be watched that way.
And like
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
y'all
you
can
like-
finagle a different way to watch these movies. I think that was very helpful for your mental health.
I know. That's why I'm watching with subtitles. I'm just like, I need something different. I need to like mix it up. I might like in an upcoming lap like watch these in Spanish and just see how it goes. Because
Okay, I mean, there was that YouTube video that was going around that was just like, everybody's like, oh, Star Wars is if you watch it like a silent movie, it's great. And they were like, that's actually not right. What you need to do is you need to watch it. You need to watch the Japanese audio with the black and white image, and then US subtitles so that it looks like a Kurosawa movie, which is what he's going. And then that's how you watch Star Wars. And so you guys should just watch these movies in black and white in Japanese, because the dialogue is not the best. And then with the subtitles for English, and then tell me how it is, because I think it could actually be really good.
Okay.
Oops, all dubbed. I like that lap. And then we cut in Godzilla movies in between.
Hell
right?
yeah.
Like, I know that like I'm probably seeing things that I've never seen before, especially for the newer movies, which we have not seen as many as the earlier. Like,
Amen.
At a certain point, most of the new stuff I'm noticing is going to be stuff that we've already talked about. I just forgot that we talked about, right? So like, we gotta get weird with it.
Yeah. I'll send you the YouTube video. It's great.
Why is every prison in this universe unable to hold the people in the prison?
There's a lot of prison breaks in these. There is. Way more than I ever imagined happen in real life.
just so many more. Prisoners are generally not transportable, right? Every single time you transport anybody. How did Deckard get out of it? The black side, like there's, Dom's been arrested a few times. Dwayne and like there was a whole 10-minute scene.
Yeah.
Of prison breaking. Like, I mean, they got to get better.
And these are like max security prisons too. These aren't like, like local county jail, like what is it? Like,
it's not like they threw me drunk tech, Yeah.
I will also say that prison security is so bad in these movies that a viable option, which works, is to put Brian in prison and let him get information and then extract him.
Yeah.
Right.
Just saying. Joe, do you have any notes, any other thoughts about this movie this time around?
I have one more note, and that's at one point when they're doing like the magnet chase where Ramsey's driving, they pass what looks like a cafe called Los Iguanas, which is pretty cool considering there is an iguana as one of the only animals in these films.
Huh.
So, yeah.
It's true. In the beginning of 4.
Yep.
With Kara.
With Kara. There you go. Tie it all back.
Kim, other thoughts about F9?
Yeah, watching this right after Hobbs and Shaw had me wondering who would be, which trio would be better in battle against each other, the Shaws or the Torettos.
Ooh.
Just the siblings, the 3 siblings. Deckard, Owen, and Hattie.
Hattie, yeah.
Yeah, against Mia, she's gotta really try to pull some more weight here with Dom and Jacob.
But I think that Mia shows she is capable, just not given anything to do. Like, in this one, she's driving. She's a competent driver. She's fine with that. Like, Hattie is badass, though. She, like, fights the Rock.
She's quite good.
Yeah, she fights the Rock.
Fast, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think... I can't bet against the Torettos, but at the same time, on paper, the Shaws look pretty good. They look like a pretty strong team.
Yeah.
This is a match I would watch.
They would jump out to a heavy lead, and then somehow...
The ref doesn't look.
Well, I don't think the Torettos cheat. I think they just summon their inner will or whatever, and they win.
I think the ref gets spun around at one point. The Rock throws a chair out from under the ring, and that's what happens.
To who, though? Who's he throwing the chair to? His buddy Dom or his new best friend?
That's the thing.
Deckard
He's
Shaw.
Kearns right in the middle of the tag team.
I don't know. Walt, any other notes, thoughts about this?
Not really. I think, like, again, there's parts of these movies that feel like they're kind of falling apart now. There's still a lot that I feel like it's fun to watch. I don't know. Like, I hope I didn't sound too down on it because I actually did. I enjoy watching these things. I think that they're pretty fun. I think that, not even on a, like, oh, you can just, like, turn your brain off way. I think that it just generally, like, these films are pretty fun to watch. And so I hope I didn't sound too down on it because I
Not
just
at all.
like kind of pulling at these things because I think that they're interesting. And again, like, there's really nobody else doing franchises like this. Even the ones who are like, you have the MCU, which is definitely doing the comic book style of, like, you have 60 years of Spider-Man, right? And so what does that look like? And so I think with these, they're very much treading on new ground in a way that I think is still pretty exciting because I think that there's a lot of franchises where I kind of know what they're going to do next and I kind of know what they're going to try to tackle next and I kind of know the scale that they're going to try to do it next. Whereas, like, I think with these, like, I really just don't know what they're going to do next. And I think that in terms of a franchise is, like, all you could really ever ask for.
I think it's very well said.
I'm excited to talk to you guys next time just because I want to hear, like, where your ideas of where they're going next is.
Hell yeah. Because we're doing like one more of, like, let's talk about Fast X and then one more after that of just being, like, whole thoughts.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
That'll be fun. Okay. I'll continue to prep some stuff on that.
What do you guys think of the name F9? That's my last question about this. Then we get to play the game. But, like, what
F9,
as a name...
the Fast Saga was official title in certain countries, but not in America. It was either F9 or the Fast Saga or both. Because when Joey and I went to go see it, we're like, what the fuck is the title of this movie? Because our ticket, the banner at the theater, and what Vin had said in the pressers were 3 separate titles.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think Walt, is it better or worse than Hobbs and Shaw?
I think it's better than Hobbs and Shaw. I do think that it doesn't necessarily live up to the promise of it because when you press F9, you update the document, and I feel like it doesn't necessarily pull it off. I own a company called Numlock. I'm allowed to make keyboard jokes. Fuck off, Joey.
It was good. It was good. It was great.
F9 calculates the highlighted portion. I'm trying to figure out what F9 typically does. It's not a key that I often use. Doesn't have a standard use in Google and Windows.
It's just not. It's not really great. It's just like, again, like the function keys are just like so ambitious because they're just like, clearly every computer will have at most 12 functions in the future. We won't know what all of them are, but it's 1988 and we're introducing the concept of Windows. Let's just give him all the options and we'll fill them in later. Like.
The F9 thing, that it makes me think about wrestling. I just over and over again because there's a famous finishing move in wrestling that Brock Lesnar has called the F5, and that Wardlow in AEW has called the F10. It's just a style of move now. So the F9 is just, put them on your shoulders, spin 'em around, drop them on the
It's
ground.
even better than the F5, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let us play This Ain't No 10-Second Race, a.k.a. Boy, Do We Have a Podcast for You.
Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Come and check out our show. Yeah, yeah.
This is where we go on X.com, the everything app powered by Grok, and we find a tweet about the Fast and the Furious, and we respond to them. And guys, I want to say, Joe let me know that night or maybe the next morning, big points last time, for maybe the first time all lap.
Wow.
Especially, Joe got at least something, a little bit of something, but one of you also got big stuff too, so we'll get there right now. But I know both of you have sent me your tweets, but before we get to those, let us first look at last episode's picks, just 1 week ago. I found Randy Thomas Jr., who was taking guesses at the upcoming Universal release dates, which were from May 2020. We said it's a tragedy none of this happened. Let's get you in Furious 11-7, send you back in time to make sure it all does. Both of a podcast for you. Randy Thomas Jr. did not respond at all. Randy Carter, our listener, and also the one who is doing the chronological edit, responded twice, so I get no points, but at least our Randy, found that interesting, so swing and a miss there. Joe, you found Yuva Raj at Yuva_404, quote tweeting, what is your favorite action film of all time? Hobbs and Shaw, John Wick 3, Mad Max Fury Road, MI7. We said Hobbs and Shaw on top where it deserves to be. Boy, do a podcast for you. And Joe, Yuva Raj, like the tweet, you get a point.
Thank you. Finally, it's been a while, so I'm glad to be back on the board. Thank you.
You are now up to 83. For reference, I am at 66.5. Walt, you are at 1, and Kim, you are at 0.
Oof.
Walt, you found, this is now heart emoji, moon emoji, star emoji, butterfly emoji, Marta at Yubalana on Twitter. Quote tweeting, someone recommend a good rom-com so I can rub my feet together under the blanket and giggle, and Marta said Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. And we said, that's our favorite rom-com too. Boy, do we have a podcast for you, which also it rhymes, which is very nice.
Hell yeah.
Marta, we got 2 likes, not from her, but Marta responded saying, that's really good to know, and adding a gif of Dom's car from the first movie doing the wheelie thing. So, Walt, you get 5 points.
Wow.
You went from 1 to 6 in a hurry.
Giant
I mean,
leap.
not really in a hurry. Like, it took, months, but,
Yeah.
As you can see,
Big
this is the long game. We're in this for
Hell
the long
yeah.
haul.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I feel so good about this.
It was a good one. Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I said to Joey, I was like, Walt on the board.
And then, Kim, you found Discussing Film, talked about first logo for The Mandalorian and Grogu, and that's Laddie said Hot Fuzz, Cop Out, Hobbs and Shaw, Two Guns, the other guys, Let's Be Cops, The Mandalorian and Grogu. And we said, this is one of my favorite ones, and I will just say, no one interacted with it. 2 Hot, 2 Fuzz, 2 Cop, 2 Out, 2 Hobbs, 2 Shaw, 2 Guns, 2 other 2 guys, 2 Let's, 2 B, 2 Cops, 2 Mandalorian, 2 Grogu. Boy, do a podcast for you. And not even any of our listeners, our dear sweet listeners, liked it. I would like it if I could.
Hey,
I must remain
long
impartial.
game. The comeback's going to be
Long
epic.
Yeah.
All right. Kim, Walt, I think Walt sent the first, so Walt, can you please hit us with your tweet for this episode and how you would like to respond?
I would like to ask, can I change mine? Because I found a better one.
For sure.
Of course.
As long as you do not change to one of ours. But yes, you are absolutely able to.
Out of curiosity,
So
is
put
one
it
of
in Zoom
yours
chat?
from Reaction Rocket?
Oh, wait.
Maybe?
You can't do Reaction Rocket because Reaction Rocket's one of our listeners.
Ah, shit. Okay, well, that's fine. Hey, Reaction Rocket, you had a good tweet. It's similar to the one that I'm doing. The tweet that I sent is from @VLZ0. It is a picture. It is, quote, retweeting Discussing Film. And it is Christopher Nolan is a fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. He watches every single movie of every single type of genre. You never hear him shit talk other people's movies, says Emily Blunt. And that's a source from a THR article. We all know about this, obviously. The actual tweet that I am sending here is it is a picture of Christopher Nolan in an IMAX cinema with his hand upon his chin in contemplative fashion, being like, and then the tweet itself is Christopher Nolan watching Tej and Roman go to space in F9.
It's very good.
And it's great. And I would like our response to be, we are also cinephiles. We hope that we can count Mr. Nolan as a listener. But boy, have we got a podcast for you.
Didn't Christopher Nolan did come out and say, like, I really like Fast and the Furious movies at some point, right?
Also,
Wasn't
I'm
that
going to
true,
follow
Joey?
Reaction Rocket. That guy it seems great.
We found him through this game, and
Really?
he has become a diehard listener.
Rock
He's
on.
very active on Twitter about Fast and Furious. Love it. Kim, hit us with yours from Khaleesi.
My tweet is from Khaleesi at Alexa Targaryen. Watching Fast and Furious 9, and what do you mean they're in fucking space? How'd they go from racing the cars to launching out into space? And then 2 crying emojis. And please respond to Alexa Targaryen here that all lowercase letters, they're in fucking space, and then 3 exclamation points, and 2 of the same crying emoji.
Kim, you're really making a play to beat my 6. I see your game, and I must respect it.
Joe, hit us with yours, please.
Mine's from Home is Where You Make It at Oh That's Kev. This is from June. Bro, folks really hacked a top company and requesting $300 million? I just can't grasp this. This is like Cypher from Fast and the Furious. I just want to be like, yeah. I mean, like maybe they have a nuclear football or something. I don't know.
Kind of like you just saying yeah.
Yeah, shrug. Okay, can we just do that? Yeah, boy, we have a podcast for you. Sorry.
That's great.
I like that somebody was out there being like, damn, there's a hacker threatening a company just like Cypher. You know, like that's the first hacker, like the first famous hacker that came to your mind. That's awesome.
All right, mine is from Miyuko at Miyuko_Junsei, and it is a Screen Rant link about how John Cena might be returning to the franchise, who knows. And Miyuko says, what? And then the thinking cloud emoji. At John Cena's hashtag Jacob Toretto died, but he may be cheating death emoji since hashtag FastX. The Fast Saga is resurrecting him for the 11th and final installment, hashtag Fast11. Then he puts the copy, or they put the headline for the article, John Cena's Fast and Furious 11 returns looks even more unlikely after one major update. And look, this is not the tweet that I would normally respond to, but I'm trying to go for Joe's engagement game, and I'm going to say, we'd love to have Jacob back in the franchise. Would you? Boy, the podcast for you. And just like, because if they just say yes.
Question at the end is
5
possibly
points.
helpful. That's points.
Usually
I've tried
not,
it before.
but possibly helpful.
Doesn't seem to work.
What about, like, I didn't see him in Fast 10. What are you talking about?
Oh.
We've done that before, and that as well as that goes over on the podcast, Twitter does not react well to that. It's a thinker. Thank you both once again for joining us to talk about F9. Only one of these movies that, until, the inevitable other movies that you guys, of course, will join us for, but only one more movie left in this franchise. We're winding down, but we still got time.
I'm very excited.
Did he die? What is this?
No, I'm still here. My power dipped, so my camera...
Okay, cool. That's fine. Sorry.
Yes, I know that this is an audio medium. For listeners, Joey's screen just went into basically a 1980s television
Color
screen.
bars. Mm-hmm. It's the most 80s moment, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, this is again, we are having a ton of fun here. It is a very good thing that you guys do, and it's kind of it's been a really good journey so far. I'm looking forward to our finale and then our epilogue. It'll be very fun.
What would you like to plug, Mr. Walt?
Let's see. I am the executive editor of Sherwood News. If you like business news, you should check out Sherwood News. It is at sherwood.news. I have a book. It's called You Are What You Watch. Cool people from the Patreon really like it, and you should be more like them and do that, and also buy it for your friends and family. The audiobook, I can probably say this now because I found that it's available for pre-order already, apparently, is available for pre-order already.
Are you reading it?
No, I am not. I leave things to the professionals.
Okay.
I love, obviously, listen, I've been on this podcast for many episodes. I do enjoy talking. I think audiobooks are a very specific medium, and I really appreciate good ones. And I think that I am fun to listen to, but audiobooks need to be at the right syncopation and right pace. Otherwise, people tend to really have a rough time. So the guy who played the Yu-Gi-Oh villain Marek is voicing it, and I'm very excited about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Marek is... Hold on, wait, we got it. What?
Yeah.
Marek is voicing it?
Yeah. Yeah. He sent in a tape for it, and I was like, this guy sounds great, and I looked him up because I was like, this guy sounds a little familiar, and played a Yu-Gi-Oh villain, and I was like, yep, nope, that's the person, that's the guy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I want to say counterpoint. I found out in this past week that Werner Herzog narrates his own memoir. So
Wow.
if he can read an audiobook,
I will say,
think you also
I
can.
love Werner Herzog, and he has a distinctive voice, and I do have that audiobook. It's very good. I love I have a lot of David Mitchell has a book that he did himself. Like, it works 100%, and I think it'd be fun. I do think that for this one, I was like, I'm gonna call on a pro to do it. And so yeah, that's out in September. I think on the 23rd. Either way, if you have Audible, time to cash in those credits. It's a good one. It's an extremely visual book, but you do get a PDF of all the charts, I believe. And yeah, I don't know, folks should check out the book. It's a good time. And then I'm at Numlock normally, so it's numlock.com.
Very, very cool. Kim, what would you like to plug? What would you like to promote? What new stuff? What luxurious things are you getting paid to explore?
The Bloomberg Power Players Summit is coming up, and I am interviewing two wonderful gentlemen. One is Roman Reigns, WWE's #1 box office attraction and perennial
Super
WrestleMania main eventer. I'm reading this off of the promo for the summit. These are the titles they asked us to put on here. And the other one is Paul Heyman, WWE Hall of Famer,
Yeah,
and the legendary wise man to Roman Reigns.
that's so cool. You get to meet some wrestling buds. That's fun.
So get hype about that. I will
I'm hype
write
about
about it when done.
Super, super cool.
Check that out at
Roman Reigns of the Fast and
Bloomberg.com.
Furious.
Yeah, of the Fast
Roman
and
Reigns
Furious as well.
of Hobbs and Shaw.
Joe, our next episode is Ewoks, The Battle for Endor. Speaking of Star Wars.
Yes, true. That is true. I keep forgetting, but yes.
A movie I have not seen, and when Andor came out, I was like, hold on, Endor and Andor are different things? Had to figure that out, but yes, different things. Ewoks, The Battle for Endor next week. Between now and then, though, our patrons will get a bonus episode of Airborne from 1993. Great movie. Good episode. Go check that out. Airborne from 93. Next week, for everybody, Ewoks, Battle for Endor. But for all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFastTooForever, or at TooFastTooForever on all the socials. Email us, family@cageclub.me, and check out our Patreon page at TooFastTooForever.com. Go buy some books. Go check out some articles. You know where to go. And check out our store at cageclub.me/shop. I am Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too.
And that was Walt, Hickey, and Kim Bhasin, and we will tell you all about it
When we see you again.